America prides itself on equal opportunity and public education for all. So why are public schools across America so different? In high school, I thought that all public schools had to be pretty much the same. But after graduating and talking to students from other districts, I found that that wasn't the case. And after extensive research, I found that the heavy reliance on property taxes to fund public schools is the cause for inequality within our school system. Perhaps some of you have noticed the same difference. School has a major impact on you and whether or not you're able to go to college, so every student deserves a thorough and equal education. So today I'm going to help you understand how public schools are funded, why that perpetuates inequality due to the heavy reliance on property taxes, and I want you to understand that the federal government needs to make changes to encourage equality within our school system. First, I'll explain how public schools are funded. Alana Samuel's article, Good School, Rich School, Bad School, Poor School, published on August 25, 2016 by The Atlantic, a nationally awarded magazine, dives into the issue of unequal public school funding. So public schools are funded mostly by property taxes. A portion of the funding also comes from state and local governments, but the heavy reliance on property taxes favors schools that are located in wealthy areas, in areas that have high property values and therefore get high property taxes. Which isn't fair because low-income schools oftentimes provide other essential services such as free meals to their students. Sean Reardon, a Stanford University graduate, researched and reported on the achievement gap between students in wealthy and poor districts in his 2012 article, The Widening Achievement Gap Between the Rich and the Poor, published in Community Investments. He found that areas with higher property values score higher on standardized tests, are more likely to attend college, and are likely to have a higher income after graduation compared to schools in low-income areas. This directly opposes equal opportunity because it prevents the poor from having the same opportunities as the rich. Poor students have a harder time becoming wealthy after they graduate. This map shows what districts spend on average, and there's a great variety. The lowest spending school spends $5,000 per pupil, while the highest spending school spends $40,000 per pupil. Obviously, with such a wide gap in spending, there are going to be gaps in the quality of education between schools. This map is similar. It shows the differences between the lowest spending and the highest spending school within a state. States that are in red have wider gaps between what schools spend, and schools that are in the blue have smaller gaps between what schools spend. Pablo Mitnick, a researcher at Stanford University, worked with researchers from the Pew Charitable Trust to examine economic mobility in July 2015 in their report, Economic Mobility in the United States. They found that parental economic status is a really good predictor of a child's future economic status. Essentially, a student who comes from a rich family is likely to be rich, while a student who comes from a poor family is likely to be poor. If this issue of equal funding isn't addressed, then equal opportunity in the United States of America is in jeopardy. So obviously, family income and property value affect the quality of education. The solution seems to be equal funding for all schools. But is money really the answer? The Chalkbee, an American educational news source, published an article in December 2018 written by Matt Barnum, a former teacher and policy director, titled Does Money Matter for Schools? Why one researcher says the question is essentially settled. They reviewed 13 studies, 12 of which found that increased funding benefits students, including higher test scores and graduation rates. Increased funding doesn't always mean equal test scores between rich and poor students. But well-spent funding does create improvements for students. Corey Turner, an experienced reporter, worked with a group of reporters to investigate school funding. In their 2016 radio broadcast and article, Can More Money Fix America's Schools?, published by the National Public Radio, they found that increasing funding will positively impact students. Schools that are in low-income areas or have a lot of English as a second language students or a lot of disabled students need other resources because they have to provide smaller class sizes, free meals, and other services to their students. So while increased funding only narrows the achievement gap slowly, it does create a higher quality of life for students, which is an important thing that can't be overlooked. Derek Houston, a member of the Illinois Educational Research Council, published an article titled Public School Funding and Post-Secondary Outcomes in Illinois in 2018. He found that higher funding leads to higher enrollment and graduation from post-secondary schools and universities. So if we look at this graph here, it shows that in 2002, there was less funding for schools and more students scored below the grade level that they should have been at on tests. And in 2010, after funding had been increased, there are more students scoring at grade level. This graph also shows that when a parent's income is increased, their students are more likely to have greater achievements throughout school. So every American deserves the same liberties and opportunities as their neighbors, and we must work together to achieve such equality. Public school funding perpetuates inequality, and the government must make changes to encourage equality in the educational system. Please support politicians and legislators who want to redistribute property taxes to create more equal funding in public schools. Please encourage programs that improve the quality of life and education for poor students. True equality takes years of work. As a society and as Americans, we owe it to ourselves and to our country to fight for equal opportunity and education for all citizens. Thank you.